Let us begin with the civil service. This is a very important topic in government. It appears in your exams every single year. By the end of this lesson, you will understand the meaning of the civil service, the structure of the civil service, the functions of the civil service, the characteristics of the civil service, the problems facing the civil service, reforms of the civil service, and how to answer exam questions. Take your notes. Let us go. First, what is the civil service? The civil service is the permanent, professional body of officials that implements government policies and administers public services. Civil servants are employees of the government. They are not elected. They are appointed based on their qualifications. They remain in their jobs even when the government changes. This provides continuity. The civil service is different from the political executive. The political executive includes ministers and the president. They are elected or appointed for political reasons. They come and go. Civil servants stay. The civil service is also different from the military, the police, and other uniformed services. Civil servants work in offices, not in uniform. In Nigeria, the civil service is organized into ministries. Each ministry is headed by a minister who is a politician. The permanent secretary is the most senior civil servant in a ministry. The permanent secretary is the chief advisor to the minister. The permanent secretary ensures that the minister's decisions are implemented. The civil service also includes departments and agencies. Examples include the Federal Civil Service Commission, the National Planning Commission, and various parastatals. Now let me explain the structure of the civil service. The civil service has a hierarchical structure. At the top is the head of the civil service of the Federation. This is the most senior civil servant in the country. The head of the civil service advises the president and coordinates the work of all ministries. Below the head of the civil service are the permanent secretaries. Each ministry has a permanent secretary. The permanent secretary is the accounting officer. He or she is responsible for the ministry's budget and expenditures. Below the permanent secretary are directors. Directors head departments within a ministry. They are responsible for specific policy areas. Below directors are deputy directors, assistant directors, and principal officers. At the bottom are clerical and administrative officers. They perform routine tasks like filing, typing, and record keeping. The civil service also has technical and professional staff. These include engineers, doctors, lawyers, economists, and statisticians. They provide expert advice and implement technical programs. Now, let me explain the functions of the civil service. The civil service serves several important functions. The first function is policy implementation. The civil service carries out the policies made by the government. When the government decides to build a road, the civil service hires the contractors, supervises the work, and pays the bills. Without the civil service, policies would just be words on paper. The second function is advising the government. Civil servants are experts in their fields. They provide advice to ministers and the president. They prepare briefing papers. They analyze options. They warn of potential problems. Ministers rely on this advice to make decisions. The third function is record keeping. The civil service keeps records of government decisions, finances, and activities. These records are important for accountability. They allow citizens and historians to see what the government did and why. The fourth function is continuity. Political leaders come and go. Elections happen. Governments change, but the civil service remains. Civil servants provide stability. They ensure that government operations continue smoothly when political leaders change. The fifth function is budget preparation and execution. The civil service helps prepare the national budget. Civil servants estimate how much money will be needed for each ministry and program. Once the budget is approved, the civil service spends the money according to the law. The sixth function is regulation. The civil service enforces government regulations. Civil servants inspect factories to ensure they follow safety rules. They collect taxes. They issue licenses. They enforce building codes. The seventh function is service delivery. Civil servants provide services directly to citizens. They issue passports and driver's licenses. They process benefits. They answer questions. They help citizens navigate government programs. Now let me explain the characteristics of the civil service. The civil service has several key features. The first characteristic is permanence. Civil servants have job security. They cannot be fired simply because a new government comes to power. This allows them to focus on their work without fear of political retaliation. They can give honest advice even if it is not what the minister wants to hear. The second characteristic is political neutrality. Civil servants are supposed to be neutral. They serve whichever party is in power. They do not campaign for political parties. They do not use their positions for political advantage. They implement the policies of the elected government, even if they personally disagree. The third characteristic is anonymity. Civil servants are not supposed to speak publicly about government policies. The credit or blame for policies belongs to the political leaders. Civil servants work behind the scenes. They give advice to ministers, but the ministers take responsibility. This protects civil servants from political attacks. The fourth characteristic is merit-based recruitment. Civil servants should be hired based on their qualifications, not on who they know. There should be competitive exams and interviews. Promotions should be based on performance, not on connections. The fifth characteristic is professionalism. Civil servants are expected to be experts in their fields. They should have the knowledge and skills to do their jobs well. They should follow a code of ethics. They should be honest, hardworking, and dedicated to public service. The sixth characteristic is hierarchy. The civil service is organized in a clear chain of command. Each person knows who they report to and who reports to them. Orders flow down from the top. Information flows up from the bottom. This structure helps ensure that work gets done efficiently. Now let me explain the problems facing the civil service. In many countries, including Nigeria, the civil service faces serious problems. The first problem is corruption. Some civil servants demand bribes to do their jobs. They steal public money. They award contracts to their friends and family. Corruption wastes public resources and undermines trust in government. The second problem is inefficiency. The civil service can be slow and bureaucratic. Simple tasks take too long. There is too much paperwork. Decisions are delayed. Citizens become frustrated. The third problem is overstaffing. Many civil services have more employees than they need. This is called bloating. It wastes money on salaries. It also creates inefficiency because there are too many people doing too little work. The fourth problem is understaffing in critical areas. While some parts of the civil service have too many workers, other parts have too few. There may not be enough doctors in public hospitals or enough teachers in public schools. The workers who are there are overworked. The fifth problem is low morale. Many civil servants are underpaid. They work in poor conditions. They see corrupt colleagues getting rich while they struggle. They feel unappreciated. This leads to low motivation. They do the minimum required and no more. The sixth problem is political interference. Sometimes political leaders pressure civil servants to break the rules. They may demand that contracts go to certain companies. They may ask civil servants to ignore violations. Civil servants who refuse may be transferred or fired. The seventh problem is lack of accountability. In many civil services, there are no effective mechanisms for holding civil servants accountable. Poor performance is not punished. Good performance is not rewarded. This creates a culture of mediocrity. The eighth problem is outdated technology and procedures. Many civil services still use paper records and manual processes. They have not adopted modern information technology. This makes work slower and more error-prone. Now let me explain civil service reforms. These are efforts to address the problems of the civil service. The first reform is the establishment of civil service commissions. These commissions are responsible for recruitment, promotion, and discipline. They are supposed to be independent of political interference. The second reform is performance management. Civil servants are evaluated on their performance. Good performers are rewarded. Poor performers are trained or dismissed. The third reform is computerization. Governments are introducing computers and software to streamline processes. This reduces paperwork and speeds up service delivery. The fourth reform is privatization and commercialization. Some government functions are transferred to private companies or turned into commercial enterprises. This reduces the size of the civil service and improves efficiency. The fifth reform is training and capacity building. Civil servants are given training to improve their skills. They learn new technologies, new management techniques, and new customer service practices. The sixth reform is pay reform. Civil servants are paid better to attract and retain qualified people. Pay is linked to performance in some cases. In Nigeria, several civil service reforms have been implemented. The Civil Service Reform Program of 2004 introduced performance contracts for permanent secretaries. It also created the Bureau for Public Service Reforms to coordinate reform efforts. The Integrated Payroll and Personnel Information System, or IPPIS, was introduced to eliminate ghost workers. The Treasury Single Account, or TSA, was introduced to consolidate government funds and prevent leakages. These reforms have improved efficiency, but many problems remain. A common exam question asks you to define the civil service and explain its functions. Here is a sample answer. The civil service is the permanent body of officials that implements government policies and administers public services. Its functions include policy implementation, advising the government, record keeping, continuity, budget preparation and execution, regulation, and service delivery. These functions are essential for the smooth operation of government. Another exam question asks you to describe the characteristics of the civil service. Here is your answer. The characteristics of the civil service include permanence, political neutrality, anonymity, merit-based recruitment, professionalism, and hierarchy. These characteristics are designed to ensure that the civil service serves the government effectively while remaining neutral and professional. Permanence and anonymity protect civil servants from political pressure. Merit-based recruitment ensures that qualified people are hired. Another exam question asks you to identify the problems facing the civil service. Here is your answer. The problems facing the civil service include corruption, inefficiency, overstaffing, understaffing in critical areas, low morale, political interference, lack of accountability, and outdated technology. These problems reduce the effectiveness of the civil service and waste public resources. Reforms are needed to address these problems. Another exam question asks you to discuss civil service reforms. Here is your answer. Civil service reforms include the establishment of civil service commissions, performance management, computerization, privatization and commercialization, training and capacity building, and pay reform. In Nigeria, reforms like the 2004 Civil Service Reform Program, IPPIS, and TSA have been implemented. These reforms have improved efficiency, but many challenges remain. Continued reform is needed to build a civil service that serves the people effectively. Here is what you need to take away. The civil service is the permanent body that implements government policies. Its functions include implementation, advice, record keeping, continuity, budget preparation, regulation, and service delivery. Its characteristics include permanence, neutrality, anonymity, merit-based recruitment, professionalism, and hierarchy. Problems include corruption, inefficiency, overstaffing, understaffing, low morale, political interference, lack of accountability, and outdated technology. Reforms include civil service commissions, performance management, computerization, privatization, training, and pay reform. Understanding the civil service is essential for understanding how government works. Review all 10 topics. Practice past questions. You are ready for your exam. Good luck.